My name is Barry Anderson. I'm the Senior Justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court. Don't be impressed by that. It just means I've been around a long time. I had the opportunity to judge this competition. I've had the opportunity to judge this competition over the last several years, but I was also an assistant coach many years ago, so I've seen both sides.
Good afternoon, guys. My name is Alex Orlowski. I'm a We the People alum. I'm now a practicing attorney in Indianapolis doing complex commercial litigation. Happy to be here.
Good afternoon. Yes. My name is Darcy Kern, and I am also an alum of the program, and I am now a history professor in Connecticut.
Be so kind as to introduce your team and coaches and advisors.
My name is Maggie Compton.
My name is Ted Hankey.
I'm Linnea Vincent.
I'm Phoebe Mall.
And I'm Drew Thomas, and that's our teacher, Mr. Fred Cole.
Very good. The question we've been asked to address today is in Unit 1, and that question in specific is question 3. In John Locke's second treatise of government, he asks this question: if man in the state of nature be so free, as has been said, if he be absolute lord of his own person and possessions, equal to the greatest and subject to nobody, why will he part with his freedom? How did Locke answer this question? Do you agree or disagree with Locke's answers? Why or why not? Explain why both John Locke and Thomas Jefferson claimed there was a natural law in a state of nature. Do you agree or disagree with their position? And explain your position. What did Locke mean by a social contract? Why did he think it necessary? And what obligations does it place on the individual? Timer ready?
Ready.
The team is ready. We're ready too. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Shortly after Locke poses this question, he reveals the answer: safety and security. People in a state of nature are very free, yet full of fears and continual dangers. Under Locke's premise, people would not completely part with their freedom, but have it abridged in order to gain security. Quote, the only way whereby anyone divests himself of his natural liberty and puts on the bonds of civil society is by agreeing with other men to join and unite into a community for their comfortable, safe, and peaceful living, one amongst another, in a secure enjoyment of their properties, and a greater security against any that are not of it, according to Locke's second treatise of government. This concept is clearly seen in the establishment of any government. All governments have basic laws which the people under that government are subject to. He felt government could not be forced upon man, but that they needed to willingly agree to work together to create a social contract.
Locke's position that a reason a person would give up their absolute freedom is to guarantee their own safety. More specifically, in the United States, we have seen people have certain rights limited in order to preserve a secure society. We have definite restrictions on free speech when it comes to a situation that poses a clear and present danger. So while people might give up the right to say whatever they want and wherever they want to, they preserve their safety, which is shown in cases like Schenck versus United States.
Locke's theory was based on consent, believing men being, as has been said, by nature, all free, equal, and independent, no one can be put out of this estate and subjected to the political power of another without his own consent, as stated in the second treatise of government. Thomas Jefferson, in turn, took the thoughts of John Locke and incorporated natural law ideals in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The general idea of natural law is that it is the government's job to serve the people and protect our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Government is created by the people and should in turn protect the people and our rights. Jefferson acclaimed, a free people claim their rights as derived from the laws of nature and not as the gift of their chief magistrate. If the government was not created to serve the people, it would be tyranny. Revolution would become impossible because the government would always be prepared.
In a state of nature, while individuals may have all of their freedoms to do as they please, they have no way of protecting themselves from others pursuing and exercising their own freedoms as well. By consenting to give up some of their absolute rights to enter into a social contract, they gain the security of not living in constant fear. Locke asserted that social contracts were human creations and needed to be cultivated in order to preserve a healthy society. Our government provides this security today through the Constitution, laws, and decisions. This eliminated people's ability to bring harm upon one another, shown in Virginia versus Black, as well as keeping a balanced society that is functioning with the people living cohesively together.
While a state of nature would imply absolute freedom to do as one pleases, it also implies a complete lack of security. forming our nation, the soon-to-be citizens agreed that by subjecting themselves to a government of their own creation, they would forego absolute freedom for protection. Thus, the answer to why man leaves a state of nature is perfectly summarized by the words of Thomas Jefferson that it is to secure our rights that we resort to government at all. Thank you. We are now open to your questions.
Thank you. So, pick up on this idea of security discussed in your paper. What should we, as a citizenry, do when the government fails to protect our safety, such as the incident where a public safety officer does not go in to respond to a school shooting?
I think it's not only it's a duty and an obligation to demand more from our government because, like we said, we don't derive our rights from the government. It's the government serves to protect our rights, so it's within our power to vote for representatives who are going to help their constituents by instituting laws that will help to further protect the citizens and guarantee their safety, and also by practicing civic participation, we can help to improve the quality of life in society and hopefully make people feel more secure.
I think going off of what Drew said, it's like it is our duty to push back. It's our duty to demand more because we did consent to give up certain rights in order for them to maintain our security, and that's their job. If we're giving our part, they should give their part. And I think it's shown, especially in young teenagers, we're pushing back. We're saying, hey, we need this protection. We're protesting. I mean, we created a national walkout of our school to commemorate the victims who had died in a school shooting, to show that we need more security. We do not feel safe.
And I think that even with the protests that we're seeing, the marches that we're seeing, and as Phoebe said, it is largely in the younger generation, our generation, that we're seeing these protests because it has impacted us directly or through someone else. We feel it strongly, is that we're also now using social media as a platform to get our voices heard. I personally, I know other members of my team as well, we text to vote on a bill or to sign a petition, things like that. And it's just incorporating everything now as a younger generation. I think that we're truly starting to turn somewhat.
Professor Kern?
Yeah, you guys mentioned that in the state of nature, people have absolute freedom and they're totally independent. But Phoebe, you mentioned the subject of duty, and Locke argues that in the state of nature, actually, it's pre-political, but it's not pre-moral. And so I'm wondering what moral obligations or duties people have inherently that they need to bring to civil society.
Just in basic, I would say to recognize the common good and not think so much of just your own natural rights, but kind of look out for the underdog too.
And we create government so that we can protect our rights, so that the government can be there to make sure that there is no absolute state of war or there is no injustice, because the reason we have government is so there is justice, but we don't want to give up too much of our rights for that.
I think morally, you have an opinion. You generate an opinion whether or not you know it. You have kind of a moral compass on what you feel is right and wrong. And I think being able to exercise the First Amendment and your freedom of speech pushes that back, and it almost vocalizes your moral compass and what you feel is right, especially with the school shooting situations. And being a young teenager, that's so important. We're not allowed to vote if you're 17 yet. We're sitting as seniors in high school, and some of us are 17 years old, and we can't exercise that vote. We can't exercise the right to give our input quite yet. So being able to exercise our free speech and being able to counter and manipulate things in order to push and to have a voice, which is really important. I think that really drives your moral.
What was Locke's view of the importance of judges and justice? How did Locke view that?
Well, actually, like Locke, Thomas Hobbes had a view on the state of nature, but where Locke and Hobbes differed the most is that Hobbes thought that state of nature was just constant war and that life was nasty, brutish, and short. But Locke's opinion was that the main problem with the state of nature was impartial justice and a lack of laws that applied to everybody. So he believed that although everybody does have a moral obligation, even in a state of nature, not everybody has to act on that, and there's no certain way to ensure that everybody is either following their moral obligations or being punished for it. So he, in his opinion, the importance of justice and judges was up there with the most important.
So if we need impartial judges, right? We know in several states throughout the nation we elect our judges. Is that inconsistent with the idea of impartial justice?
Well, I mean, if you look at the Constitution and how we appoint judges in the federal courts, we appoint judges through have the president pick the judges, and then we have them go through Congress for approval, which can create a more nonpartisan, it keeps politics out of it. But I mean, recently we've kind of seen that go away, especially with the appointment of Neil Gorsuch's, how Senator McDonald proposed the nuclear option.
I think if we look at, like, say, the Supreme Court, like, they're on there for a chunk of time. Like, it's not limited. It's until they're impeached or they retire, that type of thing. Like, they see and they grow as society grows. So being elected, like, say, with a president who has a Republican or Democratic partisanship, like, yes, they're elected because maybe their views tilt toward the president's like party or political view. But they're on there for so long, they're watching society change. Whereas the president, like, is only there for four years or so, and they can only have 2 terms. Like, they grow with society, and I almost feel like they have the ability to, like, flux their opinion and see what actually might be better for the common good in society.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Good job, guys. I like how you pushed back on sort of the assumption behind my last question, was that, well, if we elect judges, aren't they, beholden to the people? And, behind that, well, if we appoint it, they could be beholden to their appointors, right, or Congress. So, I don't know. I don't have a good answer. That's why I asked the question. If I had to offer some, advice for going forward, I'd encourage you to give more examples in your follow-up responses. I think your paper was full of good examples. You had some good examples with, the current student-led movement, the Never Again movement, but adding some additional examples might help us, contextualize your response and put that final point. Nice job.
I would like to echo what my colleague said. I thought you did a good job with his question. You gave a lot of examples. You talked about contact representatives, do your civic participation, duty to demand more, and I like how you brought in social media. That was really great. It fit the times. I do think you could give more examples. And my other comment was that, and this is just a stylistic point, when you do a presentation and you talk, make sure that your posture conveys interest, right? And so when you're reading something or just talking, make sure that your body language is conveying interest, and also the tone of your voice, because I think that helps. These are stylistic things. You guys are in high school to help you improve for the future. But I thought your original presentation was very good, and you worked well together.
So I enjoyed the discussion. Alex asked a question early on about government failing to protect safety, and Alex Drew immediately notes that our rights are not drawn from the government. I mean, that goes to the heart of this conversation about where do they come from. Now, I don't know how that, we're not going to resolve that question here today, but the point was that Locke and Jefferson certainly believed that they came from a divine source. And argue about what source, but others might be less persuaded by that. But that showed, I think, a clear command of the material. I liked your reference to Schenck. I liked your reference to clear and present danger, and we hadn't heard much about that. Thought it was a good performance. The one comment I would make is when you're giving responses to the issues that we're being asked to decide, it's really easy to get lock into current events and current experiences, and then forget to tie them back to the original source material, which is, how does this relate to Locke? How does it relate to Hobbes? How does it relate to the question of natural law? I think we needed a little more linkage there, but I thought it was a good performance, and I learned a great deal. Thank you very much.